With the elevated 100,000 point offer on the Chase Sapphire Preferred that recently came out, I'm sure a lot of y'all are wondering whether or not it's worth adding to your setup. And that can be a really tough decision, especially considering that we've had a ton of new options enter the market over the past few years, and the Chase Sapphire Preferred really hasn't been updated in forever. So it seems to be a bit lackluster as it comes to earning rates and benefits, even compared to some no annual fee cards these days. So while this elevated offer really makes sense for anybody to pick up if you're under Chase's 524 rule, in this video, I'm more concerned with whether or not this card is worth keeping for the long run. So although you may hear that this card is overrated and it's not worth adding to your setup these days, I'm going to show you exactly how with this card, with this $95 annual fee card, you can earn back thousands of dollars every single year without ever even spending on it. And just as a quick note before we dive in, today I'm going to be trying a little bit different of a filming style, and I'm not going to be editing it much at all besides cutting out my pauses and the fluff. And you can see that I have a top-down camera right here where I'll be just drawing stuff on this whiteboard rather than me relying on editing for this. So if you enjoy this style, just let me know down below. So throughout this review, I really want to approach this from my personal, unique perspective on the card, since it was a staple in my wallet for about 18 months before I upgraded it to the Chase Sapphire Reserve. So starting from the beginning, I opened the Chase Sapphire Preferred on January 13th of 2022, which was just a couple of months before I started this channel, actually. And back then, it just had the base offer, which is much worse than the elevated offer right now, of 60,000 points for spending $4,000 in 3 months. And whenever I got this card, I was in college, so I had super low spend, and that minimum spending requirement was hard for me to hit. So I found a couple of strategies that I would recommend you look into if you're somebody that's going to be struggling to hit this elevated $5,000 minimum spending requirement for the 100K points. The first of those is that I would pay for my tuition payments using a credit card, and yes, there is a 3% fee for doing that, but as you're going to see here in a second, the return on spend we're getting from these offers is so high that it's okay to eat that kind of fee if you have no other options to hit the offer. That's actually the exact same strategy I use today with my rent purchases whenever I have an offer that is just a bit too far out of my reach. So I've continued to use that one over time, and that's why I would look into it. Other than that, you can also prepay your bills that allow you to do so, whether that be your rent purchases like I just mentioned, or maybe your car insurance, utilities, or anything like that. And then the last resort that I've found that works if you really are in a pinch is that you can find somebody that you trust, usually like a parent, sibling, or really close friend, whose purchases you can put on your card and have them pay you back for. Obviously, got to be really careful with that one because you don't want to get stuck in a pretty bad situation where you're on the hook for thousands of dollars worth of spend. But it's one of those things that worked well for me with my mom, for example, who I know is going to pay me back. So now let's take a closer look at these two offers that we'll be comparing in this video. But if you're watching at a later date, hopefully this will still be very informative for you and you can just adjust the numbers based on the offer that is out right now. So let's just start again with the base 60,000 point offer after $4,000 of spend in 3 months. If we value these points at 2 cents per point, which I'll show you how I get that valuation later, that makes those points worth $1,200. Now, if we take that $1,200 and divide it by the amount of spend we had to do to get that amount of value, which was $4,000, and multiply by 100, we're going to get a return on spend of 30%. Now that is obviously a great return on spend and goes back to the point of what I was saying earlier, that if I had to eat a 3% fee off of this to hit that minimum spending requirement, well, I'd still be getting a 27% return on spend, which is not bad at all. Now we'll do the exact same thing with the 100,000 point offer. And first we'll see that 100,000 points times that 2 cent per point valuation is going to be worth $2,000 this time. So already an $800 increase from the base offer, but there is a higher minimum spending requirement. So we got to see how that comes into play here. And that'll be by taking the $2,000 that we earned, dividing by the minimum spend requirement here of 5,000, multiplying by 100. And what do we get? Well, now we get a 40% return on spend for the elevated offer, showing that even though we have to spend more, we get even more value plus 40,000 more points. So it's just a no-brainer. And taking out that 3% fee, once again, we'd still be getting 37% return on spend if that's how we hit that offer. Just for completeness sake, another elevated offer we see pretty frequently is for 80,000 points after spending the base $4,000. And that returns the same 40% return on spend as you can see here. So theoretically, that returns the same as the 100,000 point offer does that we have right now. So overall, the elevated offers on the Sapphire Preferred seem to be the best option. Like I mentioned off the top, of course, if you're just applying for this card for the welcome offer, you already kind of know that an elevated offer is the best time to get a credit card, but the first year value is really not what we're worried about right now. We're worried about the extended value it gives you for years to come. And with that being said, there are really just a couple of ways that we can expect to get value from this card over time, and we'll start with the simplest one, the earning categories. With this card, you're going to get 5x back on Chase travel, 3x on dining, online grocery store purchases, and streaming services, 2x on all other travel, and then 1x on everything else. So overall, not really a ton to write home about here. And I know that the online grocery category in particular is really annoying, but what I've found in my experience is that if you do order curbside, like here in Texas, I order curbside from HEB sometimes, and the Chase Sapphire Preferred would trigger that 3x for that purchase. So take that for what it's worth. That's all well and good, but how do these earning categories translate to the real world? Again, let's look at my use case for it back when I used to have it. In the first year with it, I spent a total of $6,615.07 and earned 68,333 points for that amount of spend. Obviously, that was super heavily carried by the welcome offer I got on this card, so let's just take out those 60,000 points here. And that leaves me with a total points earned of 8,333 points. Multiplying that very small amount of points by 2 cents per point, and I still get a total value of $166 in that first year of having it. So theoretically, that alone justifies, me keeping this card open every year, even though it doesn't earn me much at all. Now that's great, but with opportunity cost these days, I really just don't like to include these, total valuations from points earned in my effective annual fee calculations, because I could go get that or more with another card, even a no annual fee option like I mentioned. So now we got to look elsewhere to get value from this card, and that is where the credits and benefits come into play. Now there's going to be a lot of writing here, so bear with me, but this card will give you a $50 annual statement credit for a hotel purchase made through Chase's travel portal, a 25% boost on your points for any travel booked through Chase's portal, and technically their pay yourself back feature as well, but that hasn't been super valuable as of late. You also get a 10% anniversary bonus on any points earned in a year, which really doesn't come out to a ton, but it at least is something. You get a Dash Pass membership for 1 year, and DoorDash members get up to $10 off per month for non-restaurant DoorDash orders. And yeah, guys, I'm sorry, I'm left-handed, so you're going to see some smudges across this, but hey, we'll just deal with it. Plus, you get a ton of other protections and insurances, so I'll just write that as 1 here, but you'll get things like primary rental car coverage, trip delay and cancellation insurance, baggage delay insurance, lost luggage reimbursement, purchase protection, and extended warranty protection. And while some say that this benefits list isn't super strong, I would say that it kind of is for a $95 annual fee card, and it's really easy to get positive value from each. Just to start marking these off the list here and showing you how I got value from them, well, the $50 annual hotel credit is one that is very easily usable because they allow you to split up your purchases in the portal using cash and points. So what I would do is just book a boutique hotel that, I couldn't get more than 1.25 cents per point for elsewhere because of this 25% boost. And I would leave $50 left over to be paid in cash on this card. And then it would activate that credit and I would use it and then also elevate my cent per point value a slight bit because I wasn't using $50 worth of cash for that booking. Already kind of touched on the 25% boost. Really, any travel that you're doing with a hotel or airline that you can't get more than 1.25 cents per point for, that's what the Chase portal is used for. The 10% anniversary bonus is just an easy value add. The Dash Pass 1 year is actually one that I use very religiously on my Chase Sapphire Reserve, and it's not something that I would pay for without having this card, so I wouldn't really count it in lowering your effective annual fee, but it is one of those nice to haves more than like a mandatory. Same thing with the $10 per month for non-restaurant DoorDash. I also use that on my Chase Sapphire Reserve, and that saves me some good money. You can also pair that with that Dash Pass membership, and they send a lot of promotions like every month for me to use with DoorDash. And one example here that I can pull up real quick if it'll allow me to was just a few weeks ago where I saved over $60 in one grocery store order by using my DoorDash membership and that $10 off credit. Just realized that my floor lamps are off, but oh well. And then lastly on this list are the protections and insurances. Obviously those come in clutch if you ever need them, but I've never used them on any of my cards. Now, while this already gives you a ton of value with this credit card, I know that some of y'all aren't satisfied yet, and this is going to be the section where I explain exactly how you're able to get thousands of dollars in value from this card, even if you never put purchases on it, even if you don't use any of the credits and benefits. And it really all comes down to the fact that this card gives you access to Chase's transfer partners. Now, I know some of y'all may be wondering how that even matters if I don't earn any points on this card because I'm not spending on it, and I hear you on that. But the beauty of Chase's ecosystem is that you can transfer any of your Ultimate Rewards points earned on any of your Chase cards to this card to make your bookings. So theoretically, this isn't going to be your only Chase card. If it was, then you would have to spend on it in order to earn enough value to transfer out to partners. But for most people who maybe started with like a Chase Freedom Unlimited and are now looking to add this card to their setup later, as long as you stockpile those points or maybe start to add more Chase Ultimate Reward point earning cards to your setup in the future, even the Chase Ink cards, which you can transfer to this one, this is where the real value lies. So let me explain exactly how this works, considering it's not necessarily a tangible value you're getting. It's not like, $1,000 worth of credits being thrown at you. So it deserves a little bit of an extra explanation here. Without this card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Chase Ink Preferred, the maximum amount of value you can get from your Chase points is 1 cent per point, either through cashback or their travel portal. But now, not only do you get that 25% boost using your Chase Sapphire Preferred through the portal, but you unlock the ability to effectively convert your Chase points to the points currency of the hotels and airlines that Chase is partnered with. And some of their partners can give you 2, 5, 10 plus cents per point for every point that you earn, meaning that just by adding this card to your setup, you can easily double the value of all of your Chase Ultimate Rewards points. To be clear, to get really high cent per point values, you're still going to be very dependent on your exact itinerary, and you're going to be having to travel in, first or business class flights to get that kind of valuation. But the opportunity is there if you want it. If you want to keep things simple though, you literally don't have to do anything but use your Chase points for like Hyatt hotels, for example, and you'll effectively bring your average cent per point value to 2 cents per point probably with Hyatt. So just know that you can take this as far as you want, but as long as you're using good partners, you're going to increase the value of your Chase points by having this access no matter what. Rather than me just pulling this number out of thin air though, I want to show you an example of a redemption I booked whenever I had this card in the past. And it was at this really nice Hyatt resort outside of Austin called the Hyatt Lost Pines. And back in 2023, I booked 2 nights at this property for a total of 37,000 points. And around that time, that same exact room would have cost me roughly $475 per night, which comes out to a grand total of $950 for the stay. Now running a cent per point calculation here, if we take the cost of that stay and subtract out the taxes and fees, which there were none of because it was a Hyatt hotel booking, divide by the number of points used, multiply by 100, and we get a cent per point value of 2.56 cents per point. I also didn't do anything to find like an excellent redemption. I just booked the 2 nights that I wanted to based on the times I was available. So I didn't, wasn't super flexible or anything like that. And I easily got over 2 cents per point for that booking. And this kind of stuff, happens to this day with a lot of my Hyatt bookings. To illustrate this further though, let's show exactly, how much money I saved by having this perk on this Chase Sapphire Preferred rather than not being able to transfer to their partners at all. Well, again, the cost of that room for 2 nights would have been $950. Instead, I used 37,000 points. Getting a cash valuation of these points, that would be times a 1 cent per point valuation, which would be $370. So rather than spending $950, I used $370 worth of points, and subtracting those 2 values, that means I saved $580 by having this card rather than not having it. So we're talking about just one booking, a 2-night stay, one time in a year, and I saved $580, meaning that I covered my annual fee for 6 years by doing so. Now let's say that you're somebody that got the 100,000 point elevated offer on this card and you had the Chase Freedom Unlimited before, you've been stockpiling some points on that one. I don't think it's a very far reach for me to say that you could have saved up 200,000 points by the time that you're ready to start using your points. Instead of just having $2,000 worth of cashback value, if I got that same 2.56 redemption rate consistently, which is obviously not a guarantee by any means, but let's just take it as an example here. That $2,000 now becomes worth $5,120 with the transfer partners that they have. So just by adding the Chase Sapphire Preferred to my setup and using my points in this fashion, I increased the value of my points by over $3,000. That would cover the annual fee for over 30 years. So, I hope that these examples, even though they may be a little bit extreme, kind of paint the picture of how much that transfer partner access is really worth. And the Chase Sapphire Preferred is the cheapest way to get that access on the personal side. So with all of this being said here, is this card worth adding to your setup right now? To me, it's an easy yes for anybody that is planning to use their Chase points for travel. The fact alone that you can just add the Chase Sapphire Preferred to your setup and effectively automatically double or more the value of your Chase points just makes it a no-brainer to add. And that's just for the people that want to keep this long-term. Even for the haters out there who do not like Chase cards at all, you can't argue that a 40% return on spend is insane for just any welcome offer to give you. But remember that if you are wanting to apply for this card now, there are 3 main rules that you need to be following in order to get approved for it. First is Chase's 524 rule, which states that if you've been approved for 5 or more personal credit cards from any lender in the past 24 months, you'll automatically be denied for your next Chase card that you apply for. The second is the 48-month rule with the Sapphire cards. So you actually can get this offer again if it's been 48 months since you last got a welcome offer on a Sapphire card. But if it's been less time than that, then you can't get this offer again. And third goes in line with the second one, and that is the one Sapphire card rule. And the meaning of it is exactly in the name. You can only ever be holding one Sapphire card at a time. So if you have the Chase Sapphire Reserve right now, you can't apply for the Chase Sapphire Preferred and get an offer on it. But if it's been more than 48 months since you got the offer on that Sapphire card, you could downgrade or cancel this one. I usually recommend downgrading it and then reapply for the Preferred to lock in this offer. I'm still about a year out from being able to do this, but if I was in the shoes of somebody that could do this, I would. The bottom line here is that even though there are, free alternatives that give you better earning rates than this and, give you some benefits that you don't have to pay an annual fee for, all that goes completely out the window if you're somebody that wants to use your Chase points for travel. As you saw from my examples a minute or so ago, the annual fee really is never going to be a consideration for you if you just book one trip on your card every few years even, depending on how valuable that trip is. So if you do plan on applying for this card soon, first of all, I want to wish you the best of luck. And if you want to see my advice on how to get approved for a Chase credit card, which I've been approved for 10 of at this point, go ahead and click into this video next. As always, Odin and I both want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.